like this bluegill,
where they are, they're going to be there during tournament day.
It gets it to react to, which is it's like a binary switch.
Don't ever cook bacon naked.
Nope, don't do it. I've done that too.
I still got to work on that intro. And actually, guys, so for notes, this is my backup co-host that fills in anytime Janelle's not available, and I should probably make a second intro that says that he's the co-host for the episodes that he's in. But today, guys, I'm going to give you the express warning right now. This is probably the nerdiest podcast that I have ever done. And there's two reasons why. One, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and Chris has actually been specifically asking to do this for quite a bit. On top of it, I'm heading to a trade show next weekend, and I'm actually using this to teach myself a little bit as well, because I'm going to be working the FX booth at the New England Fishing Expo? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
And I want to know as much as I can so that I can have more information. You know what I mean? So let me, are you able to hear me now, Michael?
Oh,
He was one of the guys in the chat said
Gotcha.
that. So. And my audio was probably a little bit low. I don't know what's. Hold on, let me play with it for a second here.
You said it's better now, I think.
Gotcha.
Let me look. Yeah.
I can't actually hear it, so that's why I'm not sure if it's.
I can hear you. Can they hear me? I guess is the next question.
No, it was my microphone has a dial on it to keep me, because I have ADHD, and my I have like this moment.
I
And
never would have known.
You've hung out with me enough where you know, like, my volume control just
Right.
spikes like a fucking heartbeat sensor. And so I have a mic that compensates for that, because sometimes I yell. But we're going to jump right into one of the things we're actually going to show you guys the website first. We're going to break ourselves out. This is what we're going to be referencing throughout the show. I just happen to be on a random rod, but the first question, and actually I'll show you guys how to navigate this a little bit too, because it's actually nice if you get in here. One of the coolest things about the FX site is this right here. Because if you want to do something specific to technique, but you don't know what style, power, action, rod you should get, what's cool is we have this option on the website that allows you to go in and choose the type of technique that you're doing. And I'm jumping right into, I hate drop shotting. Hate it. But I'm going to be doing forward facing sonar, and I'm going to need a rod to do a lot of those style of techniques. And so I'm going to click on this, and the first question I'm going to ask my boy Chris here is, what makes a rod better for drop shotting versus just being a spinning rod in general?
Really, the difference is the actions. So, and certain people enjoy a heavier action actually on certain drop shots. And then there's the medium, of course. And then some people even like the medium light actions. The biggest thing is for me is the length of the rod. If I am making long casts, I want the longer rod to make the cast. And I also want the longer rod to be able to pick up the slack faster. If people are shooting straight down, I know some guys that even run a 6.6, a short rod, because they're watching it right below their boat.
Yep.
They want the rod tip closer to their body, so they run the shorter rod. With the smallmouth, like up on Champlain, or when you go out to the Great Lakes or St. Lawrence, they jump so much. The shorter rod sometimes will be not enough. You get that fish jumping, especially if they get away from the boat, and you can't keep the slack out of the rod. So that's kind of where it goes. And you'll see almost every spinning rod or most of the spinning rods are in there. You'll see right there at the top of the page, you got the 6.3, only the medium fast of that one. We have a medium heavy in that one, but they'll show the 6.3 with the medium. They go to the 6.6 medium light, then they go to the 6.6 medium. And then they'll just jump up to the 7-footers. And is that the carbon?
That's
Yeah,
actually the regular XAS on these, but
yeah,
the
yeah.
carbons
So
I think
these
are
are
on
yeah,
this lower down though. If you go down a little bit, I think there is carbon. So there's the 7.4. So that's the other question I had for this too is
yeah. And those are the titaniums there. So they don't have. I don't think keep going. I don't know if there is a carbon there. Oh, there they are, right there. Yep, there
carbon
they
right
are.
there. And I
Perfect.
will
Yep.
say, guys, so this is something that so I signed up with FX for a couple of reasons. One, because of him. It's his fault. But it is because if you look at this price, 129, which is a little bit higher because they did just do an increase, but at 129, I can tell you I have bought almost every major retail brand that you can buy with short of like super high end.
Your audio is still a little low.
Is it really low?
Yeah.
Where's your phone? Do you have your phone?
My phone is downstairs.
Yeah, bring it up here real quick if you could.
Why?
Because then I can hear how loud it is. I can't hear the audio, so I have no idea if I'm changing it or not.
Okay, well, that's why I came running up here.
Okay. I'm getting
Feedback.
technical advice from the audience. But these carbon series rods, if you guys are looking to just try an FX rod, I actually recommend these because for what you're paying for this rod, I have bought retail brands that are more money and less performance. I've replaced almost all of my retail rods because I can get a rod for $130 that in my mind performs like a $210 rod. And that's something that I highly recommend. But the question I was going to ask is like 7.4. Does the longer length, like if you're fishing deeper, is that why you would want a longer length to have a little bit more backbone to hook set?
Yeah, it's for me. It's the length of the cast more than
Okay.
how deep. So if I'm straight down a 7 foot, I never would go less than a 7-footer with smallmouth. That's me.
Right.
Just because I really like to have that extra length, just in case they start jumping. But I would go to a 7-footer if I was fishing straight down all the time. Again, I have a little more close quarter control. It's only 4 inches, and people are like, "Oh, it's not a big deal," but it can be. But when I'm casting, if I'm casting that drop shot, especially if you're a non-boater, so you're fishing from the back of the boat, and that guy's just doing his forward-facing stuff, and all you really can do is hopefully drop shot around. You watch the graph, you see a rock pile, you throw your drop shot over near it. That longer rod does a couple things, like I said, cast further. It keeps that fish hooked up longer, or better, not longer, but better because of the action of that rod, because of the flex in that tip.
Yep.
You have more room for air. And then the next thing is around the boat landing a fish. Sometimes a longer rod can get in your way, but once you learn to navigate that, it actually is easier to kind of land the fish because you can get that rod out and away from you, and then it brings the fish closer to you over your shoulder without having to high stick, which is bringing the rod straight up. So then the rod tip has to bend straight down, and that's where you break a rod, especially with the carbon or the titanium series.
Right.
Sorry, not the carbon. The carbon series are going to be a little more forgiving in that category.
Yeah, I will say, like, I noticed now I don't have a spinning, but I did notice in the casting, the carbon, it sounds weird, but it almost feels like it has a stiffer backbone than I think the softness of the angler is different than the carbon. Like
Yeah,
it
it's
hits the
actually,
blank quicker.
yeah. So what you're saying is true, but really what it is the tip is a little softer.
Okay.
So you get into the backbone just a little quicker if you're
Okay.
comparing rod to rod.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, because I noticed that with mine. It was like, it was like the. Yeah, my audio is better now. Sorry, I was like probably got an echo there. Basically, I noticed that with my moderate especially.
Yes, especially with the moderate.
Now we'll get into moderate and we'll get into actions in a minute, but I wanted to kind of talk drop shot for a second. So sensitivity wise, just out of curiosity, just specifically FX, have you noticed a difference between like say the carbon and the angler series?
Yep, absolutely. The and again, it's the composites they're made with. So if you go to that titanium series, the most expensive series,
Right.
they are 46-ton Toray carbon fiber. So there's the fabric is woven tighter the higher the tonnage of the fabric. So in a 46-ton, the fabric's much tighter. In a 40-ton, which is the extreme angler, it's a little looser. And then in the carbon series, it's even more looser because they're only 30-ton.
Okay.
That's where the forgiveness comes into play also, though, right? So the tighter the weave, more brittle, right? It's not going to bend as much. So the rod, and that's where Bob, when he designed these, did a great job of really making sure that he can get that tighter, more sensitive, a little bit lighter. He gets it nice and tight, but not snap, not brittle. And that's a very fine line. And that's what happens. People complain, oh, I got a $500 rod and it breaks. Yeah, because they're not going to take the abuse of an ugly stick. They're not going to take the abuse of a 10 or 20-ton. I don't know if there's 10, but I've seen 20 or 25-ton carbon fiber type or that kind of fiber that where the weave is that loose. Those are much more forgiving. Again, that's also why they cost less because the fabric's easier to make, it's cheaper, so on and so forth.
Well, on that and combined with the fact that I will say, and I'm ugly stick, for example, you're not going to get the sensitivity with an ugly stick
Right.
that you're going to get with one of these rods.
Yep.
You are going to be able to practically slam it in your car door and not have it break. And that's actually where I guess we could probably, that's a good, I guess, transition into like, so moderate rods, for example, that is what you are sacrificing a little bit in a moderate rod.
Correct.
Because the bend of the rod and everything about how that rod, and for those who aren't familiar, when you think of, when we say fast versus moderate, what we mean is how long does it take from when you put load on that rod to when it's fully bent to the blank. Now with a moderate rod, you're actually getting more bend before it gets to the blank than with a fast tip. That's why it's fast. It's literally, it gets to that point quicker than bending more of the rod. Moderate rods, which I do know a little bit about, is there's some things that treble hooks are probably the most obvious thing.
Yep.
If you fish a lot of treble hook baits, top or subsurface, a moderate rod is going to help you because with a moderate rod and you got those treble hooks, you can just sweep into your hook set. It's going to bury those, but it's going to give them a little bit more flexibility. The other thing about the moderate rod, and that's something that Chris was kind of hinting about earlier, unlike with the spinning, which they have a moderate spinning too, or not?
I don't think even in the carbon, but no, they're mostly all fast.
Um,
We have the fast light. So, and that's where, again, you can change the action of a rod, the moderate or the fast, by if it's a medium heavy or medium light. And then the next thing you can do, and this is where you can really get technical, is your line matters. Braid will make a rod faster.
Yep.
Fluorocarbon's kind of in the middle. It's still pretty fast. And then, but mono, especially some of the older monos, are very stretchy. They can make a heavy rod more moderate. So
that's what I used to do. That used to be my cheat code when I was fishing treble hooks. Is I would use a mono leader.
Yep.
To give a little bit of bungee on the hook set. But what he was saying earlier with the spinning rod was when a smallmouth jumps. So I'm going to tell you guys, I'm just going to say it. It's going to sound like a flex, but I placed first in a tournament because of a moderate FX rod. I had a fish jump, and I was able to, my PB Smalley that you guys saw me catch during that tournament, that fish jumped 3 times before it got to the boat. That moderate rod gave me enough time to bury it down because it doesn't come unloaded as quick. So when that fish jumped, I still had enough load to keep pressure on that fish before he hit the water again. So it gave me the ability to have a little bit of a like buffer. The other thing that I do, which I think some people do, but most people, this is like a cliche. So I'm talking technique here, but I actually use a moderate rod for frogging because of my brain. It's not typically the type of rod you would use for topwater, but I have the tendency to swing early. And by having a moderate rod, take a medium, heavy, moderate, when you swing on it, because it takes that little bit longer to load up, for me, it keeps me from ripping that frog's out of the fish's mouth before he gets it. So I've done little tricks like that. So that's something to think about is yes, traditionally a moderate rod is really used for cranking. A lot of guys use them for like chatterbaits too. Um, but if you have something that you find you're constantly beating the fish to the bait, basically they hit it, but you swing too early. Sometimes using a moderate rod, like I know one thing I use a moderate a lot on is like choppos or like whopper ploppers because of the treble hook and the fact that you see those fish kind of torpedo in. You tend to yank it before because you think they're there because you see that blow up, but they're not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, I don't want to go too far off track, but in our frog rods, the heavy plus, the two that are designed for the paddling frogs, which are also good for the ploppers, especially the big floppers, they're both heavy plus action, but they're or a heavy plus with a moderate action. So they have a ton of backbone. As soon as you get into it, you have control of the fish, but the tip is a little bit softer for exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's something that I guess we should probably go over that for just a second. So there's we don't have any like true ultralight stuff, right? There's nothing
No,
in the BFS like true
yeah.
BFS.
Let me quickly. I'll just because it's quick.
Yeah.
I'm going to just talk. We have extra fast, which is basically the very top 2 or 3 eyes max.
Right.
Then we have fast, which gets 3, maybe 4 eyes. Then we have moderate fast, which I think we only have like maybe 1 or 2 in the moderate fast if we have any. I think we have a couple. Then we go to moderate, and then that's really all we have in when it comes to actual rod action. We do not have a slow, and then some companies come up with some that are in between. But like I said, we have in all those other models, we have everything else in between. Now, when it comes to rod power, which is the strength of the backbone, basically, or the strength of the overall rod, we don't have ultralight. We have one light, and that's a 7-footer in the carbon series. And I don't know for sure on this one. I never asked Bob. I think he was shooting for a medium, but just couldn't quite get there. So he made it I'm sorry, a medium light, but I think he ended up just not being able to quite get what he wanted. So that's why he's calling it a light. Plus, and we can go into that later if we want, the gram rating is why it truly is.
That's why when we were talking about that, I just wanted the gram rating. So like,
so if you look, the lightest,
like this right here would probably be of the non-titanium.
That's Extreme Angler Series. That's my favorite Ned. If you're throwing a very small jig, like spy bait type stuff, or a very small jig with a 2 or 3 inch minnow on it, if you're scoping or whatever you want to do, that's the perfect rod for that scenario. Throws a bait a long way. I can cast a mile with that rod, all the way down to 30 seconds out stuff, with the right line, of course,
Right.
And reel. And that rod right there with the fine wire hooks, you just don't lose many fish. It's almost hard to pull a hook with that rod unless you're really reefing on them.
Yeah, so this is probably, I would say, that's probably the equivalent of like the closest to a BFS that we would have.
Well, in spinning, you would use that one or the 6.6 or that new 7-foot carbon.
Right.
And I did see the mention of the BFS. What we have in BFS right now, and I've been running this one rod for 3 years, 4 years now. And what it is it's the 7.2 in the Extreme Angler series. It's a 7.2, and it's a medium fast, might be an extra fast, but it really
That one.
truly,
It's
it
well done
really
right
truly,
there.
I throw a net on it. That's the titanium.
That's the titanium.
That's
So there's
and
an
that would be
extreme
a great
angler.
rod also. Yep. I don't, I've never bought a titanium yet. I should one day. I really have my stuff dialed in the way I like it. So
Yeah.
it would be there,
7.2.
7.2
So it's
right
probably
there.
that one right there.
Medium extra fast. But the advantage of that rod right there is the extra fast tip. You can really snap a net out there a long way or a hair jig. That's what I've used it for in tournaments.
Yeah.
Where when I normally run that rod is if I'm a co-angler and my boater says, "Oh, we're gonna go do this all day," and I'm like, "Okay." So I don't really need my spinning rods,
Right.
but I might need something different. I bring that rod. And I did that one day, and I actually, I won the non-boater side single day tournament, real small tournament with that rod throwing a net. We were fishing in 15 to 20 feet of water, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna be out. We're gonna go frogging. We're gonna do chatterbait stuff." And then we went to this rock pile, and that's all we did. And I'm like, but luckily I had that rod. I took off. I was using that rod as dual purpose that day. I was going to use it to throw my crankbaits, like a flat side on the outer edge of the weeds. And then I was going to use it in case I needed to throw a net. And I ended up throwing a net all day on that, and I caught a reef fish on it all day long. So, and it casts with the right reel. I run a Tatula SV on that, the 150 series, and I run that day. I think I had 8 or 10 pound on it, so I can cast it pretty far, running straight fluoro. And without that rod, I would have never been able to do what I did in that tournament. I would have had to throw a drop shot, and it wasn't set up for drop shot fishing the way we were.
So 1/8 to 9/16. Yeah, that's definitely the right in that.
Yeah. I mean, 30 second, it'll throw a 30 second. I can't remember what the smallest net heads I have, but I throw them on it. Again, when you take a 30-second net head and you add a net or a small swim bait or whatever, you're adding another 1/8 of an ounce at least. So you get up to about 1/8 of an ounce no matter what.
When you get down to that small, it really actually more comes down to your reel and line than it does
Right.
the rod, in my opinion. Like,
Yep.
if you're throwing 12-pound test, you're not probably going to be able to throw a 1/32 ounce bait. It's just not going to cast right. You kind of got to that's where you start getting into that 8-pound test and having a really good reel.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, just to put this onto perspective, Chris did mention, one of the higher end. I can't even really. They're not even really high end anymore because Tatula's come out with some other stuff, but like Daiwa. But just for perspective, guys, my spinning rod has a Cast King reel on it. You don't have to throw a super high end reel, but the high end reel is going to give you a little bit more sensitivity, a little bit lighter. The one thing I will say that you will notice with an FX rod is if your reel is not on the high end side, you're going to notice a balance issue because that reel is going to outweigh your rod significantly.
Yes.
Because
Especially
these
with
rods, it's insane how light these things are. Like when you pick them up, you're like, what? It doesn't.
Yeah.
And when you're doing, and I'm going to say this right now, and it's going to sound contradictory because we're kind of pushing the whole FX thing, but like, you don't need an FX rod, but if you're going to fish tournaments, if you're going to have, like Chris was just saying, if you're going to have a rod in your hand all day, they will only bite the wacky. It's the only thing you can get them to bite on. Having a lighter rod, hi Remy, having a lighter rod is going to be the difference between your arm being sore at the end of the day and not.
Absolutely.
And another example, and actually to kind of combine on that, is I'm going to show you guys something that
There's another rod for BFS too, real quick, Michael. It's the 6.6. Yeah, 6.6 medium. I have one right here. They are, if you like the shorter rod for the same concept.
Yep.
They are it's also a good jerkbait rod. I like the 6.9 a little better because I think this rod's a little too soft. Oh, that's the wrong one. You got too many rods back here.
I was gonna say he's loaded up for the trade
Yeah.
show. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm gonna put a link down in the description. But we are gonna be at the New England Trade Show Friday, Saturday. Chris will be there. You guys are there Sunday too, right?
Yeah, all 3 days.
They're there 3 days. I will be there all day Friday. I'll be there partial day on Saturday. If you guys come, definitely stop by, say hi, get to try out some of these rods, handle them, because I'll tell you, I fished with Chris. Let me borrow one for a tournament, and I ended up with 6 by the end of the season. So
Yeah, so this is the 6.6, and this is another really good universal rod. It's medium fast. Um, I use the 6 for jerkbait. I use the 6.9 medium extra fast, but this rod right here, it's going to be backwards, I think, right? Yeah. Well, not too bad.
I mean, it's not
Yeah,
too
that's
bad.
pretty good. So that rod right there is when you talk about light. I mean,
It's nuts.
this rod weighs nothing, and I put a titanium on it, and people are like, when I give it to people, I don't even bring that reel to the show anymore because it's really not fair. People put that in their hand and they can't fathom how light of a setup it is.
Well, and the other thing I like about that, and that's actually what I was kind of transitioning into. So I have the rod next to it. So I'll go back to that screenshot real quick, guys. But I have this rod right here.
Yep.
I bought. This is actually the first rod I picked up. And the thing about this rod is the butt on that rod. Actually, Chris, if you want to hold that rod up
Yeah.
again real quick.
Yep.
See the distance between where your hand is? So now imagine jerk bait. You're
Right.
not feeding the crap out of your forearm or your
Sheet of
elbow.
paper. That's a regular sheet of paper. That's how short it is.
So for kayak guys, and that's what I was kind of trying to bring up here, is for kayak guys trying to fish a jerk bait, you're taught in a boat, point the rod tip down. You can't do that in a kayak.
Right.
So you have to kind of jerk horizontally. With a 6.6 rod, with that butt, you literally pin that thing right here, and you can do that motion, and
Yeah.
it's not slapping your elbow. You're not like building up like a weird whiplash thing. I sucked with a jerkbait until I got that size rod. I have the casting version of that same length, and it's literally the best jerkbait rod that I've used because of the fact that I have the ability to work a jerkbait, but also the advantage of that 6.6 rod is what I call combat fishing. You're fishing up against a shoreline, and there's overhanging branches, and you want to get up underneath that branch. You want to skip docks, and you want to learn how to get more accuracy. That little rod with the lightness of it allows you to really get in there and not be getting
Yep.
caught up with stuff.
We even have the one rod I grabbed at first, the 6.3. You'll see it's got the red, so you can see that's the 6.3. We have them in spinning too, but this rod was designed for dock skipping. That's exactly what it's designed for.
Yeah.
I like that rod. You have the 6.8. I like that as my skipping rod. I feel like I have a little more control over that rod. It's more in my head probably than anything else. I can skip a little better with that rod, but the 6.8, I just like the feel of it. Plus, with the 6.8, I could throw a chatterbait on it really good, and the 6.3 for me on a chatterbait's just I don't have enough power, I feel.
The irony is the 6.8 rod that I bought it for Kitex actually, because I really like fishing like the 3/16 ounce belly weighted hooks with the Kitex, and I like having that shorter rod. It just made me feel like I had more control casting.
Yep,
I
it does.
transition into jerk bait with that rod, and I started fishing other stuff with it. But you'd be surprised. The one thing I will say, the length of a rod does affect casting. The longer a rod, typically you're going to be able to slingshot that bait a little further. But that 6.8 will cast a 3/16 ounce bait quite a distance. You would be surprised.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like that particular setup. I'm casting it with a $40 reel, but straight fluoro, which does
Right.
rob you a little bit of casting distance, and I'm still able to cast really far. Something I did want to bring up too, I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the spinning rods real quick, guys, is, and I want to show you guys a graphic real quick on this. So I'm just going to pick a random one. The eyes on FX's rods, we're going to switch to that real quick. If you look at these eyes, this setup is, I don't know how to explain it better than the line goes through this way better, in my opinion.
It
And I
does.
have had less problems with my connection knot getting hung up. Now,
So
I
that's
don't know if it's a diameter thing or if there's something that Chris can speak to on that.
it's not even that actually. All of our, I mean, we have some of the smallest micro guides. Again, like I mean, that there's nothing there, right? So, but what it is it's the components that they're used. So we use Fuji phase light guides, and I can't remember on the Extreme Angler series. The eyes we use are the K frame tangle free, and they are the phase light. And the phase light material, and I don't know what it's made out of, but the eyes on the Extreme Angler are the lightest, or they were when we first started using them. I don't know if they are still.
Right.
The lightest stainless steel guide you can buy. So it keeps the weight down. The heavier rod, the less sensitivity. Period. No matter who you talk to. The second thing is as you saw in that picture you were showing, everything tapers. So less wind knots, less line wrap around your eyes. And then the last is that material, that phase light material is some of the, I believe, hardest. Is the only way I can explain it, but it's the smoothest that there is in that I've seen in a rod under $400.
Right.
Except when we go into our titanium series, which have even their titanium guides. That's why it's a titanium series, and the material in them is even better. And again, that's where the cost is. The cost in our rods is mostly in the components.
Yeah, I'll show you guys right where the cost is. It's right here. It's this second graphic down. That is the reel seat, which are freaking awesome. Because it's got kind of the 2 style, so you really can get that thing gripped in there. But if you guys notice, if you can see right here, you see that right there? That's the blank. So what that is you actually feel the fish biting because the blank goes all the way into the reel seat, and then these are wind grip style grips. So you're not getting, there's some companies that cheap out and you're getting a glorified grip tape. These are actual, like the whole setup is super comfortable in your hand. You don't get like what I call the claw, like the way they shape those handles. You're not like holding it so tight because you actually have some squish inside of your. And the other thing is they do, like, you can sign it. See, this is 9.5, but there is differences between how long from the bottom to the reel seat depending on the type of rod, and it actually makes a difference for casting. Like a short rod, you're probably not bomb casting a swim bait with, so you don't need that huge gap right here.
Yep.
But when you get into the bigger rods, like I can probably just grab one just to show
Grab
you
a
guys.
7.7. I don't know what it technically is, but
Yeah.
that's
Let's
of course the 7.10s are even bigger, but a 7.7 is a great rod.
7.7 medium heavy fast. You're looking at
That one doesn't tell
in
you.
that graphic here.
Show you. Oh, there it is. Is that it? Should show you, right?
Yeah,
There it is.
Yeah, so it's 2 inches longer.
Right.
And that's something that I've dealt with a lot of companies, and I will say I have broken a lot of rods, almost all to my negligence. I haven't broken an FX yet, and I have bought Lose, Daiwa, Favorite, Proficiency. Like, I've used Abu Garcia, like 3-4 different Abu Garcias. Like, I've used a lot of them. I've fished with Dobbins, I've fished with other brands, and I really haven't seen, like, for example, I phased out, like I said, all but 13 fishing is the only one I'm still using, and that's only because I haven't replaced that specific technique. yet, and that's just because I haven't had enough money to do it. But the thing is like the difference is the details. Like a lot of the rods that I've used, this section right here was the same for every rod, regardless of what the length was, regardless of what the power was or what the action was. And I like the fact that some of them are longer to be able to get that real whip, but then others are shorter. And like I said, for a jerkbait, it's nice to be able to just pin that against your wrist and pop that rod and not have to have it all the way down into your forearm trying to set the hook. Now, I will say one thing about the shorter butt to think about is that 6'8". The one thing I will say, if you happen to be stupid and throw like a jig on there and you try to do that jig hook set with that short butt, you're gonna bruise your arm because you
Right?
don't have much purchase in your arm to be able to extend that power to it. But um it is something that is different in me. But like Chris was saying, kind of getting back on track, is the components that make this up. If you look how the reels are, the eyes are, how they're attached, that's
Yeah,
detail. That's not
yeah.
something that
Everything is
everybody
bubble
knows.
wrap, all the epoxies, everything. Another cool thing about everything on this rod, from the seat to the eyes, everything is touching the blank. So all the eyes are directly to the blank.
Yep.
Most companies do that, but most companies don't do that here and here and here.
Right.
Most companies wrap foam or tape to thicken this area up, and then they can get away with less material. These grips are built for our blanks. Michael Bradley made a comment about how much eyes cost. So
Yeah.
at the trade shows, this will be my 8th year, I think, 7th or 8th year. I've been doing this with FX. Um, and I know multiple people that go to the shows that are acquaintances slash friends. I know a couple of them that are actually rod builders. One of them has owned 2 different rod building companies. And then I've also met a couple young gentlemen that are into building their own jigs, building their own rods, and then an older gentleman and all of them have told me they cannot buy the components to build this rod for under $300
Yeah.
to build an extreme angler at the 189 price. To build
I
a
to
rod that
be
you're looking at would cost at least 300 just to buy the components. That's not putting it together.
yeah.
And they say, they go, I can't believe you're selling that rod. And then they asked me about the blank. And I had a gentleman that I never met before. It was 3 years ago at the Springfield show. And he's like, can I really look at this rod? I'm like, that's why they're here. I said, do whatever you got to do. And he went up and down. He got out a little magnifying glass. He looked at the blank. He checked where the spline is, which some people don't know. But there's technically a line down the rod. You can't ever see it, but it's the point. And if you tie the eyes on the side of the spline, the rod will break easier. So he went up and down that rod for about a half an hour to an hour. Then he came back, brought a buddy back the next day. And he's like, I can't believe you can sell these rods. And at that show, I think we were 140 for the Extreme Angler Series. He's like, I can't believe you can sell them for 140. I said, well, it's our show price. He goes, well, what's the regular price? And I showed him, and he's like, I still can't believe you can do that. And he said, where can I buy this blank? I really like these blanks. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't. That's another thing. I've had multiple people that want to buy just the blank, but they're proprietary just for FX.
Dude, it's crazy to I don't know how to explain it. Like the spinning rod specifically, I will say the medium heavy fast is a little bit more whippy than normal medium heavy fast that I've fished, which is good because it gives you a casting difference. It's definitely fast, but the spinning rod specifically, like if you guys see my hook sets, I am an aggressive hook set. Like every hook set's a jig hook set, whether I'm fishing a Ned rig or 3/4 ounce jig. But the forgiveness that the spinning rod gives me when I do go overzealous on that hook set, I've literally hit a fish so hard with a wacky rig that the fish hit me in the chest. Like I literally hooked like a 6-inch bass and had him smack me in the chest because I sent him flying through the air with its spinning rod. But it's hard to explain, and that's one of the reasons why the timing of this specific episode was because we're going to be with all of these rods standing on a rack for you guys to handle and touch. But I'm telling you, when you actually feel the rod and see how it bends and how it feels when you actually bend it, it's just a different, you can feel the hook set. Like I don't know how to explain it better than when you swing into it. In my personal opinion, you actually kind of understand actions better by using an FX than you do, because I will tell you, medium heavy fast FX is not medium heavy fast Lewis, is not medium heavy fast Dobbins. It's not the same. There's
Right.
one thing I will say. It's a general guideline for what you're going to use it for, but that you're not going to get the exact same amount of bend in one brand to another. But in my opinion, the Extreme Angler series specifically has the sweet spot for me where it's a little bit softer in my mind than most other brands that I've used that are in the comparable price point. And to be fair, like you were just saying, the price point of an Extreme Angler is not, it's almost not fair to
Right.
compare a retail rod. Like if you were to pick a rod, any rod at local retail store X at $189, and you were to put them next to each other, they're not, in my opinion, the same rod. They're not in the same category.
I have never found a rod under $225 that has similar components. I have never found a rod under $250 that weighs less. And that's why I became an FX person. I had neck problems, and I needed light. I needed especially my spinning rods. I needed my spinning rod to be light, and I just couldn't find the right rods. And I had some really good rods. I had a couple of Shimano's, high, not GLX type level 350, 400, but I had some $250 rods. Um, and then I had a couple 189 to $200 rods, and I loved every one of them. But once I saw the deal for FX, it was buy two. You basically, I can't remember. I got a wicked good deal on them. I bought two rods to try them out, and I bought similar rods to what I had. I bought the 7-1 medium heavy in the baitcaster because it's the most versatile rod that anybody makes, and everybody probably has one of a comparable brand. So I had one, and then I bought the 7-4 medium spinning because I had a 7-2, but I wanted the little bit longer rod. So, and I bought them, and the FX are just so much lighter. And then when you put them in the hand, the balance point is on spot if you buy the right reel. Again, if you buy a $25 spinning reel that weighs 11 grams or
You're gonna
ounces,
notice it.
that's not, you can't compare that. But when you put the right reel on it, the balance point is just unbelievable.
Yep.
And that's what sold me on the rods. And then I just was lucky enough to become pro staff and then work my way. We went to the very first show, I think it's 7 years ago now. And I've just been doing it ever since. And I run around to all these shows. Right now, we definitely are doing the New England show. We're doing the New Hampshire show. Might be going back to Springfield, and I'm talking about doing the Connecticut show. I also have, as you know, that's where you saw the rods is in the trailer. I have the rods with me.
Yeah.
When I go to different tournaments with the kayak, and I can bring the trailer, I bring it, and I have the rods with me. So if people want to try them, I let you use one with my reel on it. So
Two.
two.
Because the very first rod, that very first time I used an FX rod, I could be wrong, but I think,
I can't remember.
did you guys place at Shelburne?
We won it.
So
Just
I
saying,
almost
we won at
beat
least
Chris
once.
with his own rod.
Yeah,
I think we were like 10 inches out of third
yeah.
for that tournament, but I caught the only fish I caught that day on that rod, and I bought it at that point. It was a rod that he had let me basically demo, and I just basically was like, yeah, I'm not giving it back.
Right.
And that's how it worked. And then the spinning rod was the next one that I got, which was the second rod I got was, I bought a couple in between,
Yeah.
and then I demoed that 6.6
Yeah.
medium heavy, which literally was Chris's rod. We met at a local lake, and I caught 5 fish on the way to go catch up with Chris and the other guys. And I was like, yeah, I got to get me one of these too. And that's honestly, I will say, the biggest selling point is using them, and feeling them. So like, if you guys can go to one of those trade shows he mentioned that he's at, when you pick them up, you're like, what the heck? Like, it doesn't make any sense, because it does not feel like, it feels like you're picking up a number 2 pencil. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, it almost feels that light. Now, granted, you put a reel on it, again, you have to take into account when you start talking about cheap reels made with plastic versus carbon fiber, things like that, you're gonna get a difference in the weight. But still, I'm not a guy that's going to go buy Metanium reels. I'm buying Cast King Spartacus 2s and Daiwa CC 80s, and like, I'm not buying. Matter of fact, I have probably more Cast King reels than I have of anything else, and they're still solid. And the other thing I noticed, which I guess probably goes to like the construction of the eyes, is my braid doesn't cut into
No.
the
I've only ever seen it one rod. A gentleman that was in my club years ago had one of the, I can't remember if it was Gen 1 or I think it was a Gen 2. And for some reason he had, I don't, it wasn't cut, his eye cracked.
Okay.
But again, I mean, we
And
warned.
I'm using Chris has seen me set the hook on a jig. I'm not, if I'm not breaking these rods on hook set, I don't think you can. There was a day on, I think it was Elmore, I set the hook on a fucking tree with a 1/2 ounce jig, and I brought it all the way up, straight braid. So there was no shock absorber on this, and this is a medium heavy fast rod, so it was not a moderate rod. And I swung on that thing, and it felt like I hooked the bottom, and then it started moving, so I reeled it all the way back up, and that tree was this big around, and I hook set a tree and dragged it all the way back in a kayak with no issue. Zero issue with it, other than the sound from the braid that was pissed off that I was ripping it through braid. And I'm not using I'm using coarse braid too. I'm not using 8-strand wax super slick crap. I don't like any of that crap. I actually find that the slick braid, for some reason, I have trouble with birds nesting that more than I do the rough stuff. So but going back into like technique specific, if I want to get a Texas rig specific rod, what would you recommend on that?
For somebody that is not that experienced, the 7-1 medium heavy is a perfect Texas rod. And then you can get, if you want a shorter rod, I'd go down to the 6.9 medium heavy, or even, I guess you could go down to the 6.3. I think that would be a little short for me. Some guys, some guys will run the 7.3. That's kind of what right now I'm running. I end up giving away the 7.1 to most. That's the rod I give away the most. So I don't have a lot of extra ones. I only think I have one right now that I'm running in my regular everyday arsenal. And that one is set up for me. That one's, I got a technique that I have a rod, a reel, and a line that I can cast a mile with, that 7.1. And that rod hasn't changed since, it's probably been 4 years now. The only thing I do is put new leader on. I run a special braid on it, braid you don't like, but I can cast it so far. It's absurd. So, but yeah, the 7.3 is the one I use. And then of course we go up to that 7.7 in the medium heavy also. So any of those medium heavy rods are going to give you what you want there, but every day, day in, day out, the 7.1 is perfect. And we have that, you'll see that we have that one. If you roll up a little bit, I think you'll see that one should be in a cork right there, and then in the wind grip. Yep.
And then I will say the cork. So that's something to mention too. It's not the same.
No,
I hate cork handles. Hate them. But I'm gonna show you guys something. I hate cork handles. Not a fan. All the carbon rods
So they have.
come with cork, and it's not, and it sounds really stupid, but it's not dry. And I know it's cork, and that's like a contradictory statement, but like a lot of cork rods I've had, you could almost run your hands over them and peel the freaking cork out of them.
Yep.
These are more smooth, like the way they're made.
Yep.
It's a smoother
It's
feel.
a tighter cork.
Okay.
It's a tighter cork, and also another unique thing is our cork is not taped to the blank, so they're actually glued. They're
Okay.
attached to the blank. So again, more sensitive.
Yeah.
The cork is actually lighter. That's part of the reason why they're on the carbon series. Cost, of course, it's a little cheaper
Right.
than the wind grips because the wind grips are made for us from the wind grip company, so they're not cheap. Again, that's why the cost is where it's at.
Yep.
But the cork is a tighter cork. So people that do duck hunting, some of the older cork is a looser cork. Now a lot of the decoy carvers are using the tighter cork, not as tight as this, but they're using a tighter cork. And that's one of the biggest differences. The other thing about our cork, I have yet to see a cork break down in the 7 years.
I've had other rods, like especially spinning rods, where like
Yep.
it gets like darker and darker and darker as it gets wet, even though it's not supposed to absorb water, and then eventually like you can feel like pieces start to break out of it.
Yep.
I haven't had that happen with mine.
7 years I haven't seen one happen. I have rods that are that old. Actually, what Nick uses is a lot of my older Gen 1 rods. And
Okay.
and he is when
He has all spinning, guys. So just understand, he's rocking what, 8?
Yeah,
7, 8?
he can run 8. He only runs 7 at most. He has
But
6 slots on his.
he
and that-
rolls into a tournament with 7 spinning rods. Does not have a casting rod in the bunch. And he's using all the baits.
Yeah.
It's not just fishing type 1 bait. I've watched him do it. I was just thinking of, so that was the other thing I was going to ask while I was talking about spinning too, is if I wanted to, it's kind of a weird question, but if I wanted to use a spinning for Texas rig, is there
Yep.
one specifically you
Yep.
would recommend?
I would go to that right there. Yep. Go down to spinning
Spinning rods.
and then go look for the 7-foot medium heavy
Okay.
right there.
Medium heavy fast. Okay. So basically the big brother to the one.
That's what, and it sounds funny. That's what Nick uses for his frog. So our kicker fish at Chittenden, we won Chittenden with our kicker fish. Nick caught. We were fishing that one little section, and I'm like, dude, throw a frog in there. I said, there's definitely some activity going on. Huck a frog in there, and I was working the outer edge with a chatterbait, and he's like, he throws to the outer edge. I'm like, no, chuck it back in that hole right there, and dude, that thing hit. And it was, I mean, he was inside the inner edge, like should have never got that fish out of there. And he had that rod with a good reel and 50-pound braid on that. And he threw it in that hole. And I mean, it took us a minute to get it out of there, but that frog hit it as soon as that lure hit the water. And he was like, I would have never thrown in there because I'm afraid to get it out of there. I'm like, you got the right rod. I mean, I would go to a heavy personally, but because I can with a casting, but that rod handled it as good as any other rod.
So I will say I have had a similar experience with so just for guys' perspective, I have the, what do I have? I have the 6'6"
6'6", I think.
heavy, right? Yeah.
Medium, I
Is
think
it
6'6"
medium?
medium.
Maybe it was a medium. Yeah, you're right. Medium fast. It's that
Yeah.
one, but it's the one grip one.
Which
I didn't
is
see it in
right.
here
Keep
anymore.
going. Keep going.
That one right there.
Right there. Yep. That
That's the
right
one I
there.
have. So this rod right here, guys, I have caught a 5.5-pound largemouth with a wacky rig hook, pulling him out of pads, like wrapped in pads, and I had to bushwhack the pads. I actually told him this story because I caught the fish, and I was like, I literally was slashing the rod, and it was pulling me in the kayak into the grass, and I had to basically cut the pads off with the braid by setting the hook a couple of times, and pulled back a 5-pound largemouth wrapped like a salad in pads, and no issues, no failures, nothing. So
Yeah.
that's something that it's something that I've been debating on. Like, I like high vis braid, and I like using like with a Texas rig. I've tried it 5-6 times where I put high vis braid on a casting reel and then tried to fish like a Texas rig. But the problem is the high vis braid really has one specific purpose for me. It's small baits and it's like an indicator. I'm using it to check to see if the bait's getting hit and I don't feel the bite. So by putting it on a casting reel, I feel like I'm wasting a reel because that becomes a very niche technique specific setup. Whereas if I went with a little higher, just a sheer plug here, but if I went with like say a 10 to 12 pound reaction tackle high vis, I could kind of get away with Texas rigging. I'm not going to be like throwing it into the freaking grass, but like on the edges of lay down, skip and dock, stuff like that. I could get away with that with a spinning rod and still have the power I need, but not have to waste a rod because that 10-12 I could also throw like a wacky rig on. I could also throw a net on. So I'm trying to like debate on because I only have one spinning rod. I run 8 rods, guys. I have one spinning rod. So if they're not working on the wacky rig, I've got to cut that off and throw a net on. And then I got to cut that off and throw the next bait on. And I'm thinking about upgrading to have a second spinning rod.
Gonna have to.
And but again, I want to have specific. That's one of the things. Okay, that's actually a good kind of spin off point. Is this is where you get into the nitty gritty of it. Is I have a rod for crankbaits. I have a rod for big swim baits, which doubles as a backup crankbait rod because it's that moderate. It's actually I'll actually show you guys. It's a moderate.
You got the Corbin one. You got the 7.5, or did you get the?
I got the 7.5, so it was no, I think it was a 7.3 actually. No, maybe
No, it would be a 7 footer. Go to the two yellow ones.
yeah, I
So
think
it's either a 7 or 7.5.
it's this
I
one.
thought you went with the 7.5,
I want the
right?
7.5.
Medium heavy.
Yeah. So this rod right here, guys, I
It's
use for. This is actually to be honest, it's actually a rod that I use for a lot of things that I shouldn't use it for. But this rod right here is the one I was talking about when I said I caught my PB smallmouth. Literally, the first day I used this rod was the day I caught that smallmouth, and it was on this exact rod. And the thing is, this is the part that had me excited was this. Because I can throw a 1.5 size bandit square bill, but I can also throw my 6 cents trace swim bait. I can throw my A-Bay glide bait. I can throw a lot of my 1 ounce swim baits on the same rod, but then downsize to a deep diving crankbait, which, is kind of in the middle. Or I can go throw a potato chip style. I have like a Spro Little John that's like the tiniest potato chip freaking crankbait that you can throw. And I can throw that, but I can also throw my heavy swim bait on this. Now, you're not going to throw a 3 ounce swim bait on this, but this gives me the ability to have multiple purposes. But what I was trying to get at is I have a rod for swim baits, I have a rod for wacky rig, I have a rod for jigs, I have a rod for chatterbait, I have a rod for jerkbait, and I tie on all of those. And when you get into a tournament, especially tournaments, fun fishing, yeah, you probably have the time to just cut things off. But I literally go to a tournament with a rod specific for each type of technique so that when I get to a dock, I have a rod to skip onto the dock. When I get to a grass mat, I have a rod to throw into that grass. If I need to throw a jig, I have a rod that I can throw a jig with. And then when you get to the point of, okay, I need to change my colors, I'm cutting off a jig off my jig rod and changing my jig color and then going back to fishing. I'm not cutting 3 baits off to then go to another 3 baits. And that's why you would have many different techniques. That being said, and Chris kind of touched on this earlier, if I was personally going to tell you, if you said I only have enough money to buy one rod, in my opinion, what I would do, and this is what I would recommend to you, is take this one right here, 7-1,
Okay.
medium heavy fast, because is this made for crankbaits? No. Can you catch crankbaits on it? I have.
Yep.
Can you throw a frog on it? You can. Can you catch a jigfish with it? You can. This one right here, if you're going to buy one, buy that one, because it's going to give you all that you need. If you want to get technique specific, give me a call or hit him up, because at the end of the day, you're going to get into neat details. But if you don't know what you need, medium heavy fast is kind of the utility go-to style. But if you want to get into technique specific stuff, like what would you use for frogging
Me?
in a casting? Yeah.
Yeah. So I run there. I have two different ones. They're both the 7.7. I have the 7.4 because everybody was swearing by that rod, but I run the 7.7 heavy for my paddle frogs.
Okay.
Um, and then I run the 7.7. Yeah. So the 7.7 heavy for my paddle frogs. And then I'm sorry, 7.7 heavy plus go up. That one's
Oh,
gonna be heavy, go up a little. So see the 7.4 right there? You were just right there's the 7.4, and then there's a 7.7 heavy plus right there on the yep. And that one there is when I run my paddle frogs on. I run the 7.7 because I can cast it further and I'm not afraid to throw it back beyond where people want to go. Um, and that one I throw on my paddle on my moving frogs. If I'm popping a frog, I sometimes will even go up to the 7.7. Normally run the 7.7 heavy. I have a 7.7 extra heavy, but I just don't. No, 7.7 heavy would be my regular frog, my popping frog. The 7.4 is good, but I like the 7.7s because of the way I fish. I can cast further.
see, now that has me curious, because I didn't think about the fact that that's a moderate fast. This is one of those, like what we were
Yeah,
talking about earlier, where it's like a hybrid action. So it's
correct. It's a heavy plus moderate fast. So it's not like a heavy moderate fast that we have in the the 7.8 crankbait rod is that. This rod is definitely stiffer than that rod by quite a bit actually. It's kind of when Bob rated this a moderate fast at first, I was a little doubtful, but it is definitely it is more moderate than fast.
Well, to be fair, that right there
Right.
is, for most companies, you're only talking swim baits.
Right.
And it's normally, when you see like a heavy plus rating, you're talking it's going to be just fast and sometimes even like ultra fast.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a moderate. So to be honest, a moderate fast, thinking about like how my moderates are, it's probably because of the like it's probably almost similar to a straight medium heavy moderate, right? Would be my guess. Like
Yeah.
a moderate fast, almost because of that heavy power, is almost going to kind of balance out into
Correct.
almost a traditional moderate.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean that's with the moving with the plopper, with the moving moving type baits, that softness helps you in that hook set. It
Right.
helps you. I've got a routine down when I see a fish blow up. Again, like everybody, there are times I jump too early, but I have a routine down. But without that routine, that does help you with that. But it's not as forgiving as the cranking rod. So I do know guys. Yeah, there you go. Yep, exactly.
That's what we're fishing on, that, guys.
Yep,
Right there.
exactly.
Those
Yep.
right there. Sneaky thing, guys. Don't tell anybody about these, but these right here, those are dirty, and that's what you would use that for, because again, it gives you that little cushion to be able to swing a little bit later, I guess would be the best way to word it. And I want to show you guys, I'm actually going to change this graphic real quick. I want to show you something because I know we've been talking about this stuff, and I wanted to kind of just give you guys this right here. So this is what we're talking about. I'm actually going to try to, this is going to blur the text out a little bit, but see how those rods are bent? That's what we're talking about. So when you're talking about an extra fast, it's just barely bent, right? Fast, a little bit more bend, and that's before it's done. That's when it hits that point where it's stopped. Moderate, it's going to give you a little bit more bend. Moderate fast, this is the one we were just talking about. And then moderate is where you start getting like that. And you've seen this on like Bassmaster when those guys are using those rods and when they cast and it looks like they're throwing like a rope because it's so soft. And the thing about like a moderate, you can cast like a crankbait, especially like a cranking rod. You'd be surprised how much of a difference using a moderate rod versus a fast rod will increase your casting distance. Now, I will say for the uninitiated, if you're using a moderate rod, be mindful of what's behind you because you will hook something behind you when you cast because that bait is going backwards too. I have literally hooked my rods out of my rod holder and almost casted my rod out of my own rod holder because of the whip in the rod. But you actually will get a little bit more casting distance with a moderate rod because it's creating a slingshot effect.
Yeah, depending on the weight. If you overweight them, you lose distance.
You do lose distance, exactly.
Yep.
But like a crankbait, like a cranking rod, that's one of the benefits of having a true cranking rod is that you can take a 1.5 square bill, which usually is a hard bait to cast, and you really get that slingshot effect where that rod loads up, and when it unloads, it actually like does like a whip motion, and you can really get it out there. Again, I'm going to say this over and over again because we are getting kind of nerdy with the details. We're talking, you got to have the right line, the right reel. If you're casting this into the wind, you're going to have problems. Like, there's a lot of variables that come to it. But when it gets down to it, what I will tell you, not even just speaking FX, the difference between the rod you're buying at your local retail store and a rod that you buy from a custom builder or a company that makes technique specific rods, or just honestly, and I'm going to be completely blunt and probably make FX a little bit mad, but I'm going to be completely honest. FX is not really a custom rod. They're not building the rod to order per customer. They are getting,
They were.
They
That's
were.
where it started. That's how it started.
And they are more of a production rod, but at the same time, like Chris was saying, if you look at the components that are going into that production rod, no one is making a rod at that price point that I've seen with those components. And what you're getting is you're going to feel, I can tell you when I'm dragging a jig, for example, with my medium heavy fast, because of the way, like Chris was saying, the blank comes all the way down and all the components touch the blank, right? I can tell you the difference between a rock and a tree stump. I can actually feel the difference between hard bottom and mud because of the sensitivity of the rod. I can actually tell, and this is something that my boy Bear Fishing kind of started to understand when I let him borrow one of my rods. When you're pulling like a moving bait through weeds, swim jig, perfect example, I can tell you that it's not a fish biting. And sometimes you pull a swim jig through milfoil, kind of feels like a fish biting, but I can tell you the difference because of the sensitivity. That's why you upgrade your rods. That's why you buy technique specific. That's why you get into these weird details, because that is the difference. When it comes down to, can you catch a 10-pound bass on an ugly stick? Absolutely. Do you need a titanium series rod? No. But when you get into those little details, and again, that's why I signed up for Pro Staff with FX, because I had, and I'm going to be full disclosure, and I'm not going to give the name of it, I had another rod company approach me about being pro staff. I've actually had 2. But I told that rod company I couldn't help them sell rods because their lowest rod was $300. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to make you guys laugh and make some of you offended, but you guys are too cheap to buy a $300 rod. Everybody that's watching this right now, it's in my chat. You're not going to drop $300 on a rod. You know how I know? Because you see this pile right there? Not one of those costs $300. And I can tell you, 7 of those are FX rods. They're not all FX rods, but I'm not going to drop $300 on a rod. The main reason I want to is I want to see what the difference is, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm excited about going to this trade show, because I get to actually see one, because I want to see what the difference is too. I want to feel it in my hands. I want to test it out, and that's actually the benefit of going to things like trade shows, guys, is that you get to actually hold this thing in your hand, physically see it, feel it. Because I'll tell you, I've gone to tackle stores specifically thinking I wanted to buy a specific rod, and then held it in my hand. Like I'll be on. I'll just say the name. I went to buy a proficiency rod one day, and I didn't like how the grip felt in my hand. It felt too hard, and it was like not comfortable. And that's just something that until you actually come in contact with them, I actually honestly wish there was like a way to have like you do with trials with rods, like literally catch a fish on it. Because when you catch a fish on it, it's like, oh, like that's what sold me, was catching a jigged fish. I caught a chatterbait fish on a moderate rod. Ironically, I don't even use that moderate rod for chatterbaits anymore because I've had problems with hookups because of my brain and how I set the hook. But I don't sweep hook, I jig hook set, and with a moderate rod,
Not getting the penetration.
not getting the penetration I need. So it ends up being, I ended up using that for a cranking rod, which is what it was designed for anyways. But
But remember that rod, you wanted the medium action, and I told
and I'm
you
glad I didn't.
go up to the medium heavy. I said it's going to be too soft because you told me how you wanted to fish it. You know, if you were only throwing the square bills on it, the little square bills, the medium rod is the right rod. But if you're doing anything else with it, the medium heavy is much more versatile.
And that's honestly what I can recommend, guys, is like anybody who's watching this with me, if you are looking at a rod, especially from FX, message me on Instagram. You guys know how to find me. If I don't know the answer, I will message him and get the answer, because there is nuances. Like I said, for me specifically, and it sounds negative, but the softness and the feel of an FX rod on the hook set and the sensitivity, like wacky rig fish. Like, we won Angler of the Year, and a lot of the biggest fish I caught were on FX rods.
And on a wacky. No.
And on a wacky rig. On a spinning rod. And I'm not a huge fan of spinning rods. I really am not. That's why I only have one. It just is that way. I actually am literally thinking about picking up a spinning rod at the trade show to get my second spinning rod in my arsenal, because I've had so much success with that specific rod. But the difference is I can feel when that bass bites the tail of that wacky rig. He doesn't have the hook yet. I can feel the tug. I can tell you the difference between a bluegill nipping at my bait versus a bass. And that is all because of components and all of the things that go with all of that. So do you have any other things you wanted to mention, or any other?
No, I want to answer. Michael talked about the industry standard for power and action, and we all wish that could be true. What I will say, there are only certain companies that make blanks. And when I say that, I'm not saying certain brands, I'm saying certain companies make blanks. So there's only technically 5 or 6 rod building factories in Japan. And there are companies that, and I won't name them because it's not the right way to do this, but there are companies that run out of one factory. And there's 4 or 5 name brand companies that people know, and people, oh, these are the greatest rods. Their blanks are the exact same as 4 other brands, maybe more. And with that being said, I have seen, I don't know that much, but I know enough. I have seen the same exact blank rated differently per the company that has it. And the reason that is spacing of the eyes, how much paint is on a blank. So you take a white rod or a green rod, that rod's going to weigh more because it's got paint on it. It's got more paint on it. You take a rod that has a ton of shininess to it everywhere, it's going to weigh more because it's got more epoxy on it, so on and so forth. And that's where the same blank can actually be a little different. But that is such a strong point of, can we get it standardized? I mean, that would be perfect, because then we would be able to pick up a rod that says what it is and it would work the way we want it to. It's just not, it's never going to happen. First of all, it's like anything else. They're all fighting against each other to say they have the better equipment. I know what we run for components. I can compare that because Fuji has a website. Our reel seats are Fuji. On the carbon series, I can't remember if the carbon reel seat's Fuji or not. I'd have to look. But again, with that being said, we're running the best components we can and keeping the price down still because of the way that we have our blanks are built for us in a factory, and the rods are all assembled right in one spot. We get people at the shows that they want to, well, it's not made in America. Okay, well, name one that is. There's only two brands that make everything in the States. Two. Everybody, oh no, it's American made. No, it's American assembled. It's not American made. If it says it's Japanese Toray carbon fiber, it's made in Japan. You can't buy that material anywhere else. It's just, it's one of those things. And so we fight that battle sometimes. We also fight, and I know this, GLX, great company. Daiwa, I run their reels. Shimano, I run their reels. Great companies. They make great rods. I'm never going to say they don't. And there's plenty of other companies. I used to love Wright McGill. Wright McGill used to make beautiful rods. And then they started going to mainstream, in my opinion, and their quality got less. And that happens. But for pound, and when you pick up one of our rods and you look at the components and you compare them, the price is what really matters. And you're getting a better components, better quality. In theory, we did have a period where the Gen 2s had bad quality control. We nixed that in the butt, went to a different factory. We're doing it the right way. And that's what it boils down to. And again, at the trade shows, I always tell people that don't know our, same thing you said, I give them that 6.6 or the 6.9, or I give them a 7.4 medium light with a little Daiwa Tatula 2000 on it. And they're like, oh my God, look at how light this is. And all their buddies, and they show it. And when they walk away because they don't want to spend $140 at the show price, what really was said, I tell them at the end, I said, okay, before you buy a rod, or even if you do, you bring it back to me. I just want to compare it and just be honest with me. Most guys won't do that if they buy another rod because some of them are a little embarrassed, or I don't know why they won't. But I've had a few come back and be like, oh, look at this, look at that. And I said, okay, yeah, their price is better, but their components are not. Their weight is.
My exposure to that rod, literally before I knew Chris. Well, actually, it's kind of weird because I knew you. I met.
Yeah, we met at what the heck was it? Maury. Well, by Farley. What is that one there? Oh,
My headset. I don't know why. Every time in about hour and 20 minutes, it disconnects my microphone for some reason. I don't really know why. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we met at Maury when I was actually trying to start Slay Nation, ironically. And I had talked about it, and then I was at the trade show in New England, and I was at A-Bay's booth at the time, and I saw so many freaking FX rods come by me that's why I ended up checking them out when you said I could try one, because I saw so many people walk by with them at that trade show that I was like, okay, there's something going. Because keep in mind, guys, and I'm not trying to name drop, but like Luz was there.
Yep. Luz is there.
There's 2 or 3 other rod companies there.
Robbins, Kistler was there normally. Yeah,
Matter of
there's
fact,
quite
a
a
matter of
lot.
fact, Luz had a pro
Wicked
there too.
deals. Yep.
They had a
Luz
pro
has
in their booth.
show. Luz have great deals. The other one, Ducket Rods, amazing deals. I don't. It's like they give them away for free. I don't know how they do
Right.
that. I mean, I do technically, I do know, but I won't say that out loud.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely some other brands there, other options. It really, to me, it's how they feel. It's you get what you pay for. You get a lifetime warranty with the Extreme Angler series.
That's the other thing I want to mention too, guys, is the warranty is cool. So, and I want to clarify, how does that, you basically, how do you, if I had a warranty claim, how would I go about it? Let's ask that.
So technically on the website, there is a section, it walks you right through it, but basically you're going to cut off the bottom butt section. It tells you what rod model it is. It also has a little serial number on the bottom. You show your receipt. So you always want to keep your receipts. That's why at the trade show, I always try to email it to you. And then normally you cut off 3 to 6 inches above and below the brake, because if it was a manufacturer defect, it'll be free. If it's not, you have to pay for the components.
Gotcha.
I can warranty them at the trade show normally. This year, things are changing a little. I think I still can. I have to get the final. We have a meeting scheduled here in another, it's either tomorrow night or the next night. But I just have to verify. But normally I can do my warranties right there. Again, I need the rod pieces. Ideally, just bring me the whole thing. I'll take it off your hands. I'll dispose of it. That way you don't have to do that in a trash bag sticking out and poke a kid in the eye or something.
Yeah, broken rods are sharp, guys. I
Oh,
trust
yeah,
me.
they'll
I've cut
cut you
myself
up.
on them.
They'll cut you up. So, I mean, it's easy. And then if it at the trade show, I can't give you one for free, but it's a discounted rate. I think last year it was $90. So you get a $189 rod. You bought it for $140 at the trade show. You break it, you get another one for $90. So you're
Saving
just
money.
barely over the regular price, you know?
Yep. Now I will admit too, guys, and I don't want to disparage any particular company again, but Dobbins isn't owned by Dobbins anymore. So I know you're gonna say, well, Dobbins is a lifetime warranty too. I'm not so sure that's going to be true for very long, because they got bought by a company that is not known for their customer service. So just be aware that the warranty stuff, how you enact a warranty, is a little bit different for each company. So keep in mind that from what I've seen and from what I've heard, FX isn't really like nitpicking. Oh, well, no, they're just like, send us the piece and,
Yep.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how you broke it. I mean,
shut it in your door. They're gonna
just ran through steps on one of those rods and it breaks. Hey, that's what it is. Actually, we had a claim put in. It was the first or second year I was with the company, and Bob had a claim put in where the dog chewed the tip of the rod right off, chewed 2 eyes off the rod. I'm like, oh God, that poor dog. But
yeah,
I mean, rod lockers, we all do it. I broke 2 in my lifetime, or my 7 years. I broke one. We had a mishap with the dog in the boat, and the next cast, I picked that rod up, first cast with it, set a hook on a little 8 or 10-inch smallie, and off she went.
Yep.
And then that same day, another rod broke. It wasn't mine; it was one of my kids. And so we know that's what happened to those. The only other one I ever broke was down in my basement. I hit the floor joist. That was on me. I was trying to learn how to try a stupid FG knot.
Yep.
Had it under and whack. I'm like,
Yep.
I cried on that because that was a brand new rod. I hadn't even laced it up yet. So
Gotcha. So guys, down in the show notes, there's a link to the New England show that I'm going to be at. If you want to come hang out with me, say hi. I'll be there all day Friday. I'm going to say, we'll say half day Saturday. If you guys want to check out the rods, come down. Now, do you have trade show deal that you can say what the deal is, or is that something that they have to get the show?
I'm going to say this. I'm not 100% sure. I believe the Extreme Anglers are going to be 140 and the Carvers are going to be 90. I have to verify that. It could be a little more on each.
Yeah.
Because there has been some shifting in FX a little bit. Bob has run into some family type situations, and he's stepping back a little more. So I'm not dealing with Bob directly anymore.
Yep.
But still, I've dealt with Adam plenty. And Adam's a great guy. I just have that final meeting, and
Yep.
I have to firm everything up before I say it really out loud. But it's going to be right in that range. It's not going to be much different than that.
No, and I will say, the economy is crap. So we got an email saying that there's going to be a little bit of a change in the price, but it's not like huge. Like you're not talking a gigantic jump in price.
Yeah, it's the swim bait rods, and I haven't got this from the horse's mouth, but I'm assuming it's due to shipping. The
Yep.
swim bait rods, because they're 710. The reason why they're 710 and not 8 foot is because if you go over 8 foot on a rod tube, it costs double to ship it.
Yep.
But we still have to send the 8 foot tubes, and sometimes when they measure them at UPS or FedEx, they become 8 foot and an eighth of an inch or whatever that magic number is, and they charge double anyway.
Yep.
So I'm betting that's probably why the 710s are going for more. I'm not 100% sure of that. The carbons went up a little because we got in. Bob originally was trying to make it $100 rod, and he just couldn't get it there with the components because he doesn't want to cheap out on the components. So that's why that one jumped up to the 129, I think, instead of 119. So he had it at as low as he could, and I've seen the profit margins on those. There is not much on those.
And I will say how they're shipping too, guys.
Yeah.
So those rod tubes, I had to cut it in half with a Sawzall.
Yeah. Yeah, they are the best rod tube out there.
They're not sending them and I bought rods from other companies.
Right.
And you could do that. Yeah. I had to literally, to put these things in my recycle bin, I had to take my Sawzall to cut this in half because I couldn't get it. And they do little things like the tip has actually got a foam wrap on it to keep it from getting flexed too hard. Like it is everything from end to end, in my personal opinion. And that's Adams who signed me up for FX. That's who signed me up for the pro staff. I've talked to Adam quite a bit. I am very, like I said, contrary to all those banners down there, guys, on the bottom of this screen, I'm only pro staff for a few of those, and some of them are just companies like Fish or Die and Dark Horse are just buddies. eBay doesn't really do pro staff, but Chris is my homie. Like, I'm only pro staff to a few companies because I don't believe in representing a product that I don't use.
Right.
I won't promote a product until I've used it for more than like one day. I'm not going to promote something because I used it once and I'm like, oh, you should buy this rod. Because part of why I started this channel was because I saw too many guys that were like, this is the best rod and you need to use this rod and this is the only rod that you can catch fish on. Yeah. And then 2026, they're like, this is the best rod and this is the only rod. Like, I hate that. Like, either it's good or it's bad. Yeah. At the end of the day, if I'm telling you that something is good, it's because I have fished it, and I will tell you right now, I am the least gentle on my gear. I do not honestly put rod sleeves on my rods when I should. My rods, when I'm transporting them, are literally bungee corded together, riding on my trailer, which is about 4 things you shouldn't do together. They're suspended over open holes where they're actually only held by 2 points. Like, they're not treated gently. I hook set to the point where it actually, and if you guys watch my videos, you've heard Bear say that I do the tuna hook set. Like, I learned how to fish by catching king salmon. So I hook set like I'm hooking a king salmon and trying to bow through the bone in their mouth with every bait. Yeah. I had to really learn how to hook set with treble hooks so I'd stop betting trebles out. And I'm not gentle on my stuff. And that's actually something I do want to mention too, as far as not just rods, but FX in general. The rod sleeves are actually one of the coolest things that FX sells that's not a rod. Right. Because they are neoprene, they have a real cover, and they are, in my opinion, the best rod sleeve out. I actually haven't personally bought one, but Bobby from Jigs and Bigs outfitted all of his rods with them because they are. I'm not a big fan of those like mesh ones because the hooks always get freaking caught in them and they're always a pain in the butt. But the rod sleeves, like he's getting one out right here. So they're neoprene. They're actually like durable material, and they come with the reel cover on them built in. You don't have to buy a separate reel. It hooks right onto it.
Reel cover, and then the reel covers go either way. So if you look, they have a click on both sides, a quick connect, and you could just cut it off. Like for me, I'm always the same. I leave them together, and then it clicks on the rod like that. Has a spot to put what line you have on or what rod it is. If you can't see it quickly, they're just amazing. They really are.
And what's cool about those two is they are kind of length specific, but they're really not because the gap between the reel cover is what really attaches it.
Yep.
So you could tighten or loosen that. So you don't have to buy a 7.6 spinning one and then have the 6 foot spinning one and then have to buy another one. You can just tighten that a little bit more. And that's what's cool about it is it's more versatile. So just something to mention, guys.
If you're anal like me and I build my own of this style, and I have this as a 6.3 rod, and you'll see it comes right down. And then I have them for every rod. I have the specific length. You don't have to do that with that. It's automatic.
So just something to mention. So we're going to probably wrap it up right here unless anybody has any questions. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes here to ask any questions before we go. And like I said, if you happen to be anywhere near Massachusetts and want to come hang out, I'll be there all day. What time does the show start on Friday again? I forget.
I think Friday's noon or 1.
Let me look, actually. I'll go pull it up right now. While I'm waiting for people to come up with any questions they might have, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, you got it.
Price. I think the sleeves are $15.
Yeah, shoot.
I can go look. Hold on.
There too. I have
rod sleeves. Extreme rod sleeves are right now currently $18.
Yeah, so I think at the show they'll be 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the same. A little bit more for spinning, 20 for spinning, 18 for casting. So, but
yeah, I think they'll be 15 and 15. I thought I brought the point of sale up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys, is I kind of put him on the spot with the pricing. He wasn't prepared for that question, but so actually, dude, the show doesn't start till 1 on Friday.
Yeah, I think it's 1. Yeah. So yeah, and that's the one thing. Another great thing about the company FX is Adam, now taking more of the reins. But these guys are awesome people. They fish. They're not just some corporate guy.
No.
They're into it as much as we are. They're crazy about it, and they will answer the phone. Adam finally, they put up if you pull up the website, you'll see there's a time, and that's when, if you want to speak to somebody directly, that's when you probably need to be calling and stuff. But if they don't answer, they will call you back. I have a little bit of leeway. I can answer some questions. And if not, I know how to get a hold of them right away and try to get you an answer within that, within.
Like, just to give you guys an example, Adam's pro staff for other companies and promotes brands and stuff that he fishes with. I've watched him post videos and stuff that he does for fishing stuff. So he's not just some CEO sitting in an office telling you about his rods. He's literally in our pro staff group that we have on Facebook. I see him posting promotional stuff for battery companies and promotional stuff for bait companies. Like, he is literally a fisherman. And that was the one question they asked me during my pro staff interview was, we don't want guys just sell the rods for the sake of selling rods. Like, we want people that fish, that understand what you're getting and why you're doing it. So the Northeast, pretty much you handle all the shows, right?
Yeah, I don't know yet 100%. Adam and I have to finish and talk about that. But yes, we will be definitely at the New England. We will definitely be at the New Hampshire show in Milford at the Dome. Okay. Probably going to do Springfield again. That one's a tough one. It's more hunting than fishing.
I'm going to tell you if you don't have to.
I know, but it's good to get out there. We do now have a few people in that area that kind of go to only that one.
Okay.
And then ideally, we might be doing the Connecticut show at Mohegan Sun.
Okay.
I don't know if we're definitely doing that one yet or not. That one is a tough one also. The only time I've been there now, there is a new promoter for that one, so it's a little different. But with that being said, that show, a lot of people would rather go gamble than buy a fishing rod. So it made it really tough. Like I had a guy sold, and he's like, I'm gonna go gamble and see if I come back, and if I win some, I'll come buy one. It's like, okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow. Not,
So I might be at the New Hampshire one too if Chris has got a spot for me. So I'll be aware of that. But
yeah, we might squeeze you in there.
I'll talk to what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a tryout, and Chris is gonna see how many rods I can sell in Massachusetts, and then if I do a good job as a good employee, maybe he'll bring me to New Hampshire.
We'll see how much I have to rein you in. That's what always happens. I'm like, no, don't tell them that.
See, and that's the thing though, is honestly I don't know enough. I don't know any of the secrets that I'm not supposed to know, and I don't want to be told that. But
You'll be fine.
I'll tell you the truth. Like when I sell rods or when I sell any product, I would probably never be able to do YouTube full time because I'm not going to fluff you. I'm not going to give you some bullshit statement that doesn't like, I'm not going to try to sell you. Like, I'm not a high pressure sales guy. I'm not that guy that's going to cold call you and be like, you need to buy this because this is the best thing ever. I'm going to say, okay, what are you looking for? Okay. What type of technique do you want to do? I will be honest, I will probably steer you towards the carbon series more than I would steer you towards the titanium. If I had the choice, if you have the budget, buy the Extreme Angler series. Absolutely. In my opinion, those are the best rods. Granted, I haven't fished the titanium, but the carbon series, if you're not sure and you want to just get into the FX environment and start to experiment, I have 2 carbon series rods and I'm very, very happy with them.
Yeah, they're great rods. I know a lot of people that prefer them.
The price point on those things are awesome.
Yep.
And it's a fact of, I can tell you right now, of all the rods I've handled at that price point, you are not going to beat that carbon series rod. No. Not for that price point. What you're getting, I mean, you're getting an ugly stick, really. That's about all you're going to get in that price range. Maybe some cheaper Abus, but you're not going to get the quality of the components and the lightness and all of the build of that for that price. I still, like I said, I don't want to know. Don't tell me how they make them that price because I'm probably not supposed to know anyways, but you can't go price them. Go to the website. It tells you basically a list of like the different components that go into it, and then try to find a rod that has all those components at that price. You're not going to, because I couldn't. So, yeah. But yeah, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna let Chris.
For New York, I'll have to look up that one, and if it's one that looks like the vendors will be enough there, and I can pull some help, maybe I could go to that one. That would be one I haven't done yet, so that might be worth trying.
Yeah, I don't even know where that is.
I don't either. We'll figure it out. It's only a car ride.
It's a big truck ride with your trailer. How many? You have like a lot of rods, right? Like you basically have.
I got enough that if I was to get robbed, I would. Yeah. I've got 1,000+ rods, easy. With the 56 models, and I had last year to start the year, I had at least 15 of every model. I have 56 models, and some of them I had over 30. So, yeah.
Wow, you must have sold a lot of trade shows then, because I've seen your trailer and you definitely don't have that now.
There's a whole lot more here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I have I think it's about 3.5 foot by 3.5 foot box full, and then I have extra just cardboard boxes of just how they come shipped. I have that. Normally at the trade shows, Bob used to ship me everything, and then I would just go out of the house and sell them that way. Out of the back of the truck, I had a small crate. I've now taken that crate. I'm turning that into not a display case, but a easier way to see the rods.
Yep.
For you and I to sell them, not for the general public. They're going to be
Right.
rod racks.
Right.
But and then I have that big one full, and then that other one's going to be full of the ones that will be on the rod racks, and then I have a bunch that will be left in the trailer for if we outsell a brand, not a brand, but a model. If we outsell a model, I can run to the trailer, grab another box of 15, and start again.
So, and I do want to say, so guys, he's kind of in the northern part of the state. I'm in the middle, southern part of the state. I'm going to throw this out there. If you guys know of a tackle shop that you might be able to talk to that might be interested in selling these rods, hit me up or hit him up, because FX does do dealer deals. I would love to see some of these get into a tackle store. It's really hard to break into a tackle store in Vermont. I've tried a few.
I've had them in. I had them in Dockside when Dockside was still there.
Yeah.
In Vermont, we don't have any that I know of. In New Hampshire, there's 3 or 4 Mountain Road Trading Posts. There's
well, I didn't know we had them at Mountain Road. That's cool.
Yeah, Mountain Road. Yeah, that's kind of where that connection comes from.
Gotcha.
Tackle Warehouse has them.
Yep.
There's a couple others. There's Ben's Tackle in Mass has them.
Oh, okay.
MGC used to have them. I don't know if they still do. I haven't seen those guys in over a year. There's a store in Maine, and I don't know the name of it. I should, but I could get the name of that because I know kind of who's involved there. And then there was, I want to say it was Bounty Hunter. It was originally a gun shop, I believe. They started selling them. I don't know if they still are or not. That was in New Hampshire. So they're around, not like we would like them to be. Like when you go down south, Alabama, that area, I mean, they're everywhere. So
Gotcha. Yeah, but if you guys are aware, definitely give them my information, or if you have me on socials, send me a message and let me know who to call, and I'll be happy to call them. The way it kind of works, just a little bit of background, is I can actually call them, give them the dealer information, give them all the information they need to sell. It basically kind of works out in the sense that I can get them connected with everybody that they need to be. So I would love to see more retail shops have these, because in this area especially, there's not a lot of custom rods in general. There's fly fishing stuff, but there's not a lot in the bass space. There's not a lot in the space that FX is in. So I would love to see a retailer. So if you guys know of anybody, or if you're friends with someone that has a tackle shop or works at a tackle shop, hit me up. I'll be happy to have a conversation with them and try to, get them listed as a dealer to get these where you guys can get your hands on them. And like I said, if you're in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, there's 2 shows right there that we've already said that we're going to be at for sure. I may not be at the New Hampshire one. Definitely going to be there Friday and part of Saturday for the Massachusetts one, because I'm going to be making ice fishing content on Sunday. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed both days. But not sure, Chris.
Thing I mentioned, Michael, is anybody that is involved in high school or college, we can do team deals. So that's another thing, that if somebody's interested in, reach out to me. I can get that hooked up right away.
Cool.
And really help people out. And I'm happy to go and help teach how and why on the rods. And I can bring an arsenal for kids can put in their hands, play with. We can, really explain to them and have them feel the flex and the sensitivity and all of that.
Yep.
Even if it doesn't work out as a deal, I'm happy to still go teach that aspect to the high school, college kids. They all know more than I do, but or at least I think they do. But with that being said, I'm happy to help out any school or anything like that also.
Yeah, and my goal, guys, just so you're aware, Chris doesn't even know this, so I'm kind of dropping this on him, but my goal is at some point, I fished a little bit with Chris last year. I want to fish more with him this year. I'm going to try to get on either the boat or the kayak with him a few times this year and maybe have him demo some rods, the techniques, things like that, show what we're talking about live in person. I'm going to do something on my channel. It's a little bit different for the 2025 season. You're going to see a little graphic that shows up when I catch a fish. It's going to tell you, it's literally going to have, if it's an FX rod, I'm literally going to put the model number right there. I'm going to say FX, boom, model number. So you can go to the website, search it, and you'll be able to get all the specs. I'm not going to put all the specs on it. I'm just going to say it's my medium heavy FX, model number, blah, blah, blah. To be honest, with FX anyways, their model numbers, it's pretty obvious what it is because the model number is basically the power, the length. It's pretty self-explanatory when you look at the model name, but that's going to be something I'm going to be doing in my year anyways, is I'm going to be putting specs on bait and rod and all that in the graphic, but I'm going to try to make content specific next year for why you would use a moderate rod. And I'm going to try to do specific videos where I'm like, this is where I would use a medium heavy fast. This is where I would use a medium heavy moderate because of this situation, so that you guys get more familiarity. Because I will say, when I tried to make a rod video talking about the powers and actions and stuff, and that's where I learned a lot of stuff that I know, but it is so freaking detail oriented that if I were to make a real video about every single power and action and why you would use every length, you would not have enough time in your day to watch that whole damn video.
Right.
And on top of it, there's nuance to how you fish, which is why, again, come to the trade show. We'll talk to you. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you need, how you fish, what vessel you're fishing from, because kayak versus boat does make a difference. You're probably not going to use a 7-10 rod as likely from a 10-foot kayak that you're paddling as you are from a bass boat. You may want a little bit shorter rod, but we can tell you exactly what you need. We can go over that with you. So unless Chris has anything else to say, we'll probably end it right here. It looks like I don't have any other questions. So
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
absolutely. Again, guys, links down below. I'll put the New England or the New Hampshire show down there as well. That wasn't in the show notes before. And yeah, come hang out with us Friday or Saturday, or at least go check out the rods. If you use a rod, don't use Chris's code, use my code. So use Binya in the memo line. If you buy a rod from their website, and it'll tell them that I sent you. There's no discount. It doesn't work like that. It's just I get credit for, sending you their way, and they show love in other ways to me. So, but I'm going to end it right here, guys. I'm not going to be back for a couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing a lot of content. I'm literally going ice fishing like 6 times in the next 10 days, plus doing a trade show. So I'm not going to be free a lot to do a podcast. So it's going to be mid-February before I'm back. But be on the lookout for some content. There may be some stuff from the booth. I may do some filming there, depending on how loud the volume is and how many people I'm talking to. If I get a free moment, I'm not going to push customers away to pull a camera out. But if I get bored, you might see some stuff. So be on the lookout for that. And I want to thank Chris for doing a brain dump here, because there was a lot of stuff and it was 2 hours of talking fishing rods. I can't believe you guys hung out for 2 hours with us, but I really thank you guys, and we will see you in a few weeks.